Assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode. Today we have a very special guest. He is the gold medalist in 19 batch of FAST Islamabad campus. I believe he's been a gold medalist in 6 of his 8 semesters, something like that. Abhi tak 8 semester ka aaya nahi hai, to hame pata nahi hai kya pata, you know. But he's also vice chair of research in IEEE CS Society. And yeah, with that, I'd like to introduce Muhammad Haashir Ismail.
Thank you. Pretty good to be here.
Good to have you. Haashir, if you could please give us a little bit of an intro about who you are, what you do.
All right. So I'm Muhammad Haashir Ismail. Pretty simple. I currently a final year computer science student over at FAST NUCES. About to graduate. Can't believe it myself either. So that's pretty much the simplest background I could come up with.
So we know I want to ask you moving forward about what it takes to be a gold medalist and whatnot, but before that I feel like we should take it a little bit further back and talk about your O levels, A levels. Where did you go for school, how were you there, or phir usse aage pe chalte hain. So where did you do O levels?
All right, let's go way back. So I was born in the year 2000, and my folks at the time had just shifted to Islamabad. There'd been a year or two since they'd shifted.
From where?
From Lahore originally.
Yes.
So yeah, my folks, based on their education, sort of had this idea that their kids would definitely have better education than them. So they'd spent a lot of time saving up trying to.
Yeah.
So after I was born, they tried getting me into all sorts of the schools that were establishing around then. Ended up getting into what was at the time called root school systems.
Wo initially before
before they split. So I was in root school systems, and I had been there until my A levels concluded.
Achha.
So one stream the whole time. I didn't swap out schools which was pretty common back in the day.
Achha, so that actually differs a lot from how I went to. I think I've been in 4 or 5 schools overall, maybe 6. So
same city, or did you also shift cities?
Different cities, countries. So I want to ask, what was it like? I personally was in the same school from grade 5 to end of A levels. But what is it like being there? Chote nursery, grade 1, grade 2.
It's pretty fun.
Because then you're with the same people now.
Obviously, when you change campuses, then the administration changes. But for the most part, the peak of administration still recognizes you or knows who you are. I mean, it was a pretty fun experience. I still fondly remember most of them by name, and likewise. So whenever I see them, I do go out of my way to greet them. The Roots administration definitely remembers me in that regard, especially throughout my time.
So if we move a little bit forward to your O levels, so were you also this smart back then? Yeah.
I wouldn't say I'm smart now either. It's just a matter of my practices. As far as my O levels go, so I don't think if you were to take a snapshot of me at the O levels and were to compare it with me right now, I'd look similar at all. So the thing is, up until my O levels, okay, so I'm gonna have to step back a bit because just jumping into the O levels sort of strips away the nuance from it. So up until the 6th grade, I didn't have a precise idea what I was going to do, but I had a vague sense or feeling that it would have to do with computers. So around the 6th grade, based on my explorations of the internet, it sort of clicked for me that I should try checking game development, and that sort of morphed into me figuring out programming. So around 6th, 7th grade, I managed to get into programming. I started off with Lua, which is not a typical first language to start with. And that sort of directed me towards picking computers as a subject on my O levels.
I see.
So, but the thing was, although I thought I was going to get into something like game development, whatnot, I sort of at the time had this idea that what I was studying was not necessarily relevant to my career path. I thought it was a superficial relevance. For instance, I barely recognized that there was any connection between what I'm doing in physics, for instance. But so for the most part, throughout my O levels, I couldn't really see that connection. The classes were all right, but it was very geared toward. It was more so about learning how to attempt the test rather than learning what the actual concept is.
Exactly.
That's what I felt like during my O levels. It was more past paper centric. You're not being taught the concept. So the O levels were a bit weird in that regard, and I wasn't as serious. I did have a point where in fact, I guess a nuanced point is that I wasn't in the O levels exactly. I was in the IGCSEs, which is sort of the same thing, except we happened a year earlier.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the only difference.
You guys have 2 years O levels, no? 2
No,
years O levels.
the IGCSE is 3 years starting from the 8th grade.
Okay, so it's 8th, 9th, 10th.
10th. Then my A levels.
Okay, whereas for O levels it's usually 9th, 10th, 11th.
Yep.
लेकिन वो इतना फर्क नहीं है because I had O levels normal, but we did 9th, 10th. So we were also done by that.
But that's dope. Usually the stereotype for O levels people is, they have a year extra. That was usually the case with my colleagues as well in the A levels. So IGCSE 2, if you look at that, my results weren't particularly impressive. I had an A on Pak Studies, an A on Islamiyat, and a B on Urdu. And my Urdu is actually pretty terrible. So my mom was immensely happy that I managed a B on Urdu. I think the only thing that saved me on Urdu was the dialogue writing. I'm all right with writing dialogues, but the moment you ask me to like interpret a poem or write an essay, I'm dead.
Bro, I had like an A, B in Islamiyat and Urdu, and I was happy. Cause
I was ecstatic about my own results as well, so I feel you.
Because I didn't live in Pakistan from the ages of like 7 to 10-ish.
So you basically
so
had to
take Urdu learning I missed out on.
You took those subjects so you could actually make the prereqs for getting into a Pakistani institute.
Yeah. So it was more like my Urdu, like writing wise, was very weak, and at that time even speaking was very weak. So
I perfectly get it.
मैंने तो ट्यूशंस भी ली थी, पता नहीं क्या क्या किया था, फिर जाके मर के भी आया था.
No, I perfectly get it. My Urdu is also pretty weird, regretfully. One of my major issues is I can't distinguish between certain letters. So te and toin, and seen and swad. And another major issue is I can't really figure out the correct word gender.
Achha, please continue.
Yeah, so I can't distinguish between. I can't figure out the correct word gender either.
Like speaking of letters, I don't even remember. पता नहीं कितने होते थे. Alef, be, pe, te, se.
Yeah, no. I definitely regret that.
बोलनी पड़ती है बोल लेते हैं, पढ़नी पड़ती है पढ़ लेते हैं, you know. और इतनी ज़रूरत आज सच नहीं है. So that was
my second year of IGCSE, and then so I sort of got semi-serious around IGCSE 3 when my mid school mock results were pretty garbage. Because at the time basically I would only study 30 minutes.
So yeah, that's what I do.
Because I'm going to be honest, I'm fairly lazy. Even now I'd say I'm pretty lazy. So so obviously the parent-teacher meeting, my parents were pretty upset when the teachers told them all about why I was getting messy grades and whatnot. So I had to get serious for a bit, manage my IGCSEs anyway. I think I had an A star on everything except English first language, which I got an A on.
अंग्रेजी में A आया.
Yeah.
बाकी में A star.
Yep.
Including physics, chemistry.
Yep.
Bro.
Physics, chemistry, math, computer science.
Bro. I managed A's and all of them.
No, because I went pretty hardcore. Then it was like I wake up, I study. I don't get out of my room until lunch or something. And that was only because I was being cool, because I sort of had a family pressure at the time. Otherwise, I would not have adopted such a hardcore stance.
I think it is mostly down to family pressure. Like, I remember मेरे O levels से पहले April, वो होने थे May, June में, and then come April, my dad was like, ये कोई मतलब बास्केटबॉल नहीं खेलना, तुमने ये नहीं करना, तुम घर बैठ के पढ़ाई करोगे.
I actually understood it in my parents' case because I'd actually seen them trying to afford routes all the way throughout my education. So I got the position they were in, considering they were saving literally every penny to afford my education, my sister's education. Plus there was also the fact that if I managed my IGCSEs well, I could have gotten a school scholarship, which would have made my parents' lives much easier. I hadn't realized it at the time, but looking back, I now realize it did make sense from their position. So, yeah, I managed my IGCSEs like that, and then I moved on to the A levels.
और फिर A-levels में मिल गई होगी scholarship and everything.
I got a 50% scholarship.
50% on straight A's?
Yeah, 7 A's. The only reason I got a 50 was because of the B on Urdu.
अच्छा.
Yeah, otherwise I could have gotten 100.
सही है यार, कुछ नहीं होता उर्दू में क्या.
No sweat. I managed that year. But so for A-levels, my subject combo was this. So I started off with the classic math, physics, computer science. And then there were two decisions I made which were very bizarre. So first thing was I wanted to take A-level business. I don't know why I felt like having an understanding of business to some extent would be useful down the line. So I took business as a subject.
For that, especially
yeah, sort of.
Like
something like that. That was the basic gist. And then a while later, so I was on YouTube and I ended up stumbling across a video by Numberphile.
No.
Numberphile is a YouTube channel which mostly discusses math stuff. I ended up seeing their video on 4-dimensional shapes, and that sort of had me
bottle.
Not the Klein bottle. It wasn't a Klein bottle. It was more so stuff like how pyramids generalize in 4 dimensions and whatnot, or how the cube generalizes. I saw that video and then yeah, exactly. That piqued my interest on mathematics. And so I had made the weird decision, I think a month and a half after the A-level my first year started, where I decided I'm not going to do A-level math normally. I'm going to do both years in one.
Why?
Because then I could take further math the next year.
Oh God.
So I took A-level math composite and I was behind my peers. So like they had already done like I think 5-6 chapters, and I had to catch up to them. So my first year of A-levels was very hectic, but it was unlike IGCSE. My IGCSEs was hectic because of pressure, external pressure. A-levels was hectic by my choice. Plus, there was also the factor where, you know how every private school, the moment you're in A-levels, they're like, you guys should apply abroad, get on the SAT train. That was also another factor. I had to get on the SAT train now. So I was also studying for the SAT. So my first year in A-levels was mostly that. Physics, computer science, A-level math composite, so both years, and business.
I'm surprised you didn't end up taking chemistry. Usually what people do is they take chemistry and computer science just because they still have engineering open.
I knew I wasn't going to get into engineering. And to be frank, I love chemistry even today, but IGCSE chemistry, seeing the way it was very paper heavy, it sort of ruined chemistry for me in a sense. I'm still fine with reading chemistry on the side, but as an exam subject, I no longer like chemistry. Plus, I remember seeing the head boy walk out of the first chemistry class. This was at the time when my parents and administration were still telling me to consider chemistry. I saw the head boy walk out of a chemistry class crying, and he had been one of the smartest people I had ever met in Roots at the time. So when I saw that, I was like, no way am I surviving that. I'm getting out.
Yeah.
So that was my first year. For the most part, it was pretty hectic. My classes would start at 8:30 in the morning, and then I'd be back around 3-4 because due to so many subjects plus the different timings for each. So by the time I'd be back, I'd just get lunch and then study the remainder of the day.
Yeah, bro, we had start be different.
So I'd study the remainder of the day because I took that many subjects, so I kind of felt like I had a moral responsibility to actually commit to it. Like, I shouldn't treat it as a joke.
Exactly.
So first year, I managed to get A* in math and A's on the rest. So with that, I thought, all right, now I can justify taking further math in A2. So then I took further math, which was the thing I was actually hyped for. So A2 was comparatively a lot chiller. The only difference was now you had like university admissions on the side.
And you've given SATs and AS.
Yeah, so I gave the SAT twice. First time in AS around winter, I had a 1370.
That's
then,
pretty good.
Then I gave the SAT around, I believe it was September of the next year, and I got a 1500.
That's perfect. Why didn't you apply abroad then?
I did. We're just about to get to that part.
Okay.
So that happened. Then I gave the SAT subjects, which were still necessary at the time. Math level 2 and physics, I got a 1550 total. So, then through the school counseling and whatnot, I applied for universities abroad. And the thing was, administration I think you can definitely relate. Administrations at these private schools convince you that like you can definitely manage the US or something as you're an A-level student. But when it was my turn, so I bought into the hype, and then come March, I got nowhere. Then I'm like, all right, what am I going to do now?
But why do you think that was? Because you clearly have the grades.
Because grades aren't the only thing that matter
Ah.
in hindsight. Because consider this: the US has a more holistic applications process. Something for some reason we don't recognize, and even today we don't recognize, is that the US doesn't look at just your grades; they look at you as a whole package, so extracurriculars and whatnot, or you as a person. The thing is, in Pakistan, I don't think even in private schools you have an extracurricular culture. Wouldn't you
I
say?
think
It's more so
Zada's
people's
Zada
individual
debates,
hobbies than it is activities encouraged by the
like,
school.
as far as extracurriculars are concerned, I think Zada debates ka
That's
in
it.
private schools.
That's it. Even though when you look at the Americans, for instance, you have someone who's been playing guitar for a couple of years for their school band, or you have someone that's been participating in literary competitions or and whatnot. I feel like the extracurricular environment in Pakistani private schools, at least, isn't up to par or up to snuff yet.
Well, they don't. They focus too much. Like either you have 60-70% of schools which are focusing too much on the education and nothing else, and then you have like 30% schools which are just like har roz hum fun fair karenge, ye karenge,
Yeah, pretty
wo
much.
karenge. Who cares about?
Yeah, the
studying?
party
Ah,
schools and the
exactly.
crammer schools.
Exactly. So there's not really this nice balance in between. But speaking a little bit about guitars, I think you bought one recently, right?
Yeah, I bought one, I believe, last year.
Achha, how's that going?
Okay, so the thing is, my folks had always been interested in seeing me get onto the guitar, but my folks had this weird misconception that you sort of need to be older to get into it, which
You sort of need to be?
you need to be older to get into it, which
Why?
I don't know, my folks had that assumption,
Mhm.
something about physique and whatnot, but that's not the case. But yeah, I got it last year and I'm trying to get into it. I'm pretty slow because of obviously academic schedule and whatnot.
Fast.
You know what fast is like.
You're in fast.
But
So,
I'd say it's pretty fun.
achha.
I know. I feel like an individual shouldn't necessarily be bound to one thing. Like, you know, it's fun to know about a bit about everything around in the world around you.
Yeah. Because in Turkey they taught us the flute in school. And
Oh, that's
then
incredible.
I once tried learning the piano. Guitars, every time I've used a guitar, I've always ended up like breaking a string or something.
What,
So
were you
I-
tuning too hard?
Yeah. Like the first time ever, it was actually like my brother's friend's guitar. We were over at their house. So I was tuning it. I thought, I'm like some super shy.
Did you have a tuner?
I know. No, I was just doing the
Good
handles.
God, dude.
I thought I knew exactly what I'm doing, and then I did it a bit too much and it snapped. And turns out, after that, I was never invited to their house again for the next 5 years.
Good God. Good God. Nah. It's definitely nothing as weird as that. It's pretty fun. Again, the only barrier ends up mostly being my schedule at FAST. Plus, I guess another thing is, obviously I'm not going to lessons or something, so I'm trying to learn myself off the web or off of resources. So I know a couple of basic stuff, like maybe I know a riff or two or a couple of chords. I
Yeah.
definitely know my major seventh chords, but that's about it. Because because my taste on the guitar at least is jazz guitar.
Yeah. Because I feel like if I'd ever learn now, I'd learn like electric guitar.
Oh yeah,
And
I have an
I'd be
electric.
like,
I don't have an acoustic. I have an electric.
Sure.
I have an electric. I have a Stedman Pro Mock Stratocaster.
And uske saath now you need the whole.
Yeah, I even have an amp
speaker
with it.
and everything. Yeah.
So it's pretty decent. It's pretty good.
Like play some Ozzy Osbourne,
Yeah, so my a buddy of mine, Abdullah Bilal, has been trying to get me onto a ton of Ozzy Osbourne. So because of that, I did learn the riff to Electric Funeral by Black Sabbath,
Acha.
which is pretty fun.
Yeah. Acha, I feel like we've gotten a little bit off topic.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Rewind. You were telling us about A2 and like.
Yeah, so I got in nowhere, and now I had to figure out what am I going to do. So besides juggling for exam studies, I had to figure out where am I going to apply in Pakistan, because now Pakistan was the only route I had left. So I applied to the 3 places I knew of: NUCES, FAST, and Qaid-e-Azam, based entirely off of reputation.
Actually, I would say, like I understand NUCES and FAST, but Qaid-e-Azam also has a reputation for like CS and stuff.
Okay, so Qaid-e-Azam has had historical reputation because of their physics department. If you look back at I believe the 80s or the 70s, you had people from Princeton and MIT sitting in Islamabad at the time. So I'm not sure what Qaeda-Azam is like now. I'm not sure about it now, but at least based off of that rep, it seemed like a reasonable decision. But again, I'm not that aware of it. So, yeah. But the thing was, first off, I hadn't studied for any entry tests.
As you do.
Yep. So I applied to FAST and NUCES on the basis of the SAT.
अच्छा. अपने पैर पे खिलाड़ी.
Yep.
Okay.
So, and then I signed up for the NET. And the thing was, the day before I was supposed to attend the NET, I got a letter, an email that I'd been accepted onto FAST. And so my parents were like, me and my parents were like, all right, we don't know if it's going to get any better than this, because you and I are both aware that the admission cycles for FAST and NUCES differ so much that if you abandon FAST and then you don't get into NUCES, there's nothing you can do by that point. So I was like, all right, let's hop onto FAST. So that was that. I did not go for my NET either.
Were you doing anything in engineering or anything in computer science? So you didn't have to do physics, or is it chemistry you don't have to?
I didn't have to do chemistry.
Yeah, because I don't understand, like, वैसे तो, like, I'm of the opinion that all these entry tests for all these universities are way harder than whatever you're going to learn in, like, the first 1 year of being in the university.
No, absolutely, I agree with you. Plus, personal opinion, when you contrast Pakistan's engineering admission requirements with the world all over, chemistry is, funnily enough, not a requirement. When I was applying for British universities for engineering degrees, they only had one major requirement, which was you should have studied mathematics and physics.
Exactly.
And at most, some institute would say you should study further mathematics on top. They would never ask you for chemistry. They would explicitly state that we'll cover that chemistry knowledge.
Yeah, it's like...
as far as I'm aware, because my sister's been taking chemistry, A-level chemistry is sort of a weird hodgepodge of topics ranging from undergrad to master's level chemistry.
Because even in I think in like undergrad engineering, the chemistry you're studying is what, like tensile strength of materials.
It's very diluted. I mean, I had a friend, I had a family friend who was studying chemical engineering, and he explicitly told me that chemical engineers do not study chemistry, which sounds like an oxymoron if you're not a chemical engineer.
फिर वो क्या करते हैं?
It turns out they're more focused around chemical production. So it's more like if you have a chemist working behind the scenes on a lab working on reactions, a chemical engineer's job is to commercialize that process, as far as I'm aware. So they're more geared towards commercializing the lab process. They don't actually set about the experiments.
Yeah. So you got into FAST क्योंकि उनका पहले acceptance आ गई, as FAST does, उनकी strat है पूरी. लेकिन like when I entered, तो NUCES की acceptances came within the leaving time for FAST. So in 2019, that didn't happen?
No. If I remember correctly, I got my NUCES admission SMSs around after the refund period when I was there. So yeah, it wasn't really viable.
Yeah. So that's how you got stuck here.
Yep.
And I say stuck here, but you know, best university ever. Of course. Of course. So now that we've made it your FAST life, like talk us like step by step, how did you find like the first year? Because personally, I thought like the first year was a breeze. So let's see.
Were you a computer science student?
Yes.
Oh, right, good. So I thought for the first semester was a breeze conceptually. I think the only thing I found weird was getting adjusted to the semester system, and maybe so controversial opinion. I don't like the way programming fundamentals is structured, in the sense that like when you compare A-level CS with PF, A-level CS is evidently more geared towards problem solving. They don't bind you to a particular syntax. That's only for the sake of your practical. But when it comes to problem solving, they are more concerned with your structured solutions.
I feel like in PF, they spend too little time on like pseudocode and like building algorithms.
With PF, it feels less like they're concerned about problem solving, and more so they want to teach you the C++ syntax. It's more syntax heavy. So you end up with weird... Honestly, I don't like doing a barrage of problems that are like, if you have x is equal to a plus 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 b, then... It's
so stupid.
No, that sort of... I hate those sort of problems. I don't get why that's the approach.
Bro, I suck at dry runs. Like, honestly, हमारा PF का final था ना, it was split into 3 parts. 2 were dry runs, and the third was we had to make Monopoly. So first part I got like respectable amount. I don't remember exactly how much it was. Second part, which was the dry runs, out of 60 marks I had like 5. And then third part, which was the Monopoly game, I ended up getting batch highest. So this amount of stark difference between the two, and to be honest, I wasn't expecting it. Like we were sitting in the class, we had Sir Hassan Mustafa as our PF teacher. So he gave out part 1, मैंने देख लिया, मैंने कहा सही है, कुछ नहीं होता. Part 2 देखा, मैं depression में चला गया. I was like, ये क्या हुआ है, you know? And then part 3 he calls out.
Part 3 raised you up.
Yeah, and then part 3 में he calls out my name, मैं उठा, and he's like, सारे तालियां बजाएं, and I was like, you know? But it's like that, and then that whole concept of dry running is like still now like 4th semester, and it's still
I find dry running a detestable approach to teaching programming.
God, it's so bad.
Okay, funny story actually. So the first midterm of mine was, I believe, PF. So I sat in the exam hall, first ever mid, and what happened was the examiner was a former student. I think he was doing a master's. So he was like, "Oh, it's the PF exam. I want to check one of the papers before I hand them out." So
wait, what was the examiner?
He was a former student, I believe.
Achha.
So he wanted to see what the exam was like this time. So for 10 minutes, we didn't start the exam because he was reading the paper thoroughly.
Bro.
So at the end of it, he was like, and this was back when everything was relative, no absolutes.
Yeah.
So examiners designed the paper to be a hodgepodge of stuff, and then they would fix everything on the average. So
I preferred relative, to be honest.
It depends.
Because in relative, you can get an A at 65 or above. Absolutes.
The thing is, back then, the relative was also governed by the standard deviation. Right now, the relative approach is fixed based on the average. No standard deviation.
It's like, so average Cupid, and then they had the table.
But the current table approach,
last year.
But the current table approach makes it much harder for you to get a good grade. It makes it easier for you to pass, but it makes it much harder to get a good grade.
But I think in like if you compare it to absolute grading, it's still easier. Because I'll give you an example. In first semester, in one course we had an average of 36, and I had an A at 66, right? Because that was relative. And then in another course we had an average of around 34, and at 67 I didn't have an A because we were doing absolute grading.
Yeah, that depends on the instructor policy at that point. So yeah, the examiner actually checked out the paper and was like, "None of you are going to do this in an hour and a half. Welcome to FAST."
This was your midterm?
Yeah, this was my first ever midterm, I believe. This was the PF midterm. So I opened up the paper. Dry runs everywhere. Dry runs everywhere. And there were these cheeky little dry runs like, "Oh, we forgot to put a quotation on the C out. What's going to happen?" Or, "Oh, we've put a bunch of increment operators next to each other. What's going to happen?" Look, PF at the time felt less like I was trying to learn programming and more so like I'm trying to survive a marathon.
Exactly.
It was more so like survival of the fittest. It was some Darwinian concept.
But I think that's like the flawed philosophy with PF. Yep. Like if PF Lab didn't exist, I don't think any single person would come out of first semester even knowing programming.
I was thankful that I had taken A-level CS by that point. Because A-level CS at least covers the programming fundamentals, and I had low experience before my O and A levels.
So for me personally, I had taken computers in AS, but then I dropped it. But then during my gap year, I had created a game using Unity.
That's pretty good.
So because of that, I had a very good understanding of C# and programming as a whole. So that's why for me, like first semester, like I knew everything they were talking about up until pointers. And you know what's very funny? We've learned pointers and then OOP and data structures, and now we're doing OS. But when it comes down to like simple mobile game development, you use none of those. Like the max you need to know is an array, how to make arrays and manipulate them, and you can make a game. Not to say that using some data structures or some known algorithms would make it better. Of course it would. But when you're talking about baseline, like I could show you the game right here. Yeah. So this is using nothing we've learned past PF anywhere, this whole game. And with Unity, it's not like Unreal where you have the what is it, whatever it's called. In Unity, you actually have to code it all in. So for me, during that, I understood basically nearly all of PF other than pointers.
Now, thankfully, we covered most of that within A-level CS, even pointers, surprisingly.
Acha.
Yeah, we had pointers. In fact, I'd argue that my survival in this degree is a consequence of A-level computer science.
I feel like, yahi hota hai.
Yeah, because here's the thing: A-level computer science. What did we study? We studied basic operating systems. At least we studied it up to the point of what is a process table, what is a process tree, what's the round robin system for process execution.
अच्छा वो करवाया था A2 में करवाया होगा.
We did that in A2. We did the round robin schedule and everything. We even had basic assembly, basic data structures. We had up to basic elementary searching and sorting algorithms and some basic structures like binary search trees. Then we had some elements of conceptual networks, like how does the OSI model work, or how does the IP TCP stack work.
वो मुझे अभी भी नहीं पता. What both of the two things you just said, no clue. But it's actually a surprise क्योंकि फिर एक साल में like they managed to cover what you covered.
Have you seen
like,
what they're covering now? The syllabus has been
years.
updated. So now they have a unit on artificial intelligence where they have to specifically introduce backpropagation.
With integration and everything.
No, an intuitive sense of what the integral of.
I see. So they explain कि आपका answer फिर वो square होता है और आगे उसके साथ
they're going to
compare
explain
होता
it
है.
intuitively, and in addition, they also now have a section on graph algorithms.
अच्छा.
They're covering Dijkstra. They're covering Dijkstra and A-star.
Dijkstra and
A-star.
Which one's that?
You'll cover that in AI.
Oh.
And then they've also made it a component now where when talking about algorithms, you have to discuss their big O.
Oh God. लेकिन ये बहुत, but you know what though, overall speaking, that's very good.
The thing
Because
is,
then they're covered for like the next, 2 years, 3
I'd
years?
say down the future, considering the fact that in industry you don't need as much of your degree as you
actually
expect.
end up, like
We
assembly
might
मैंने
see-
किधर करनी
We
है
might
फिर से.
see, I mean, to quote Dr. Zahib, we might see a future where you're hiring people right out of the A-levels.
Yeah, it could be. Like, I think even now it depends on how much project experience they have.
Yep.
Because most
I mean,
tech
A-level,
companies
so
aren't
A-level-
even considering bachelors anymore, I think.
Yep. A-level computer science. When you look at the practical component, especially now, on Java you've studied stuff like exception handling, basic design models. Also, let's not forget A-level computer science. You also covered databases up to second normalization.
Damn.
Yeah, you do that.
I have a DB ka paper in like a week and I don't know what second normalization is.
I don't blame you. So yeah, we covered databases up to second normalization, and if you were doing if you opted for Java, you also know exception handling, you know basic class structures, basic OOP, and you've also been taught some elements of design. For instance, you know what a Jackson diagram is, you know what the state pattern is, or the state machine pattern is. So that so A-levels definitely gives you a weird comprehensive edge, especially if you're going into computer science.
It's like difficult then in the moment, but like the long-term benefits are.
Oh yeah, I remember my first lecture for object-oriented programming, and my instructor, Dr. Aleem, had asked if any of us knew what the difference between a process and a program was. And me being an A-level CS guy, I was like, oh, process is a program that's been that's basically set for execution. It has a process table on the memory now, and it's about to fall into your scheduler. So how it's scheduled depends. I mean, all I know is the round robin scheduling system. So
And he was like, beta.
he was surprised I mentioned process table. So yeah, that sort of gave me a perspective on what A-level CS is like.
So basically, because you did CS in A-levels, you felt like you had a little bit of an edge coming into university.
Yeah, so that sort of contributed to me being pretty lazy at my patterns at FAST.
But then you still ended up getting like what in your first semester?
My first semester was a 4.
Damn. In calculus as well.
Yeah, because dude, I took further math.
That's true.
You
were good at calculus.
Okay, I'm going to be frank with you. There is not a single mathematics course that I had not covered by my A-levels. Linear algebra, for the math. Calculus, for the math. Differential equations, for the math. I mean, we had second order and first order differential equations there as well, and that's pretty much all you need. The rest ends up being things you can study in a day or two. Probability and statistics, math and further math, because you have components for them. In fact, I studied more statistics than expected because with A-level math and A-level further math, you end up studying inferential statistics, so stuff like hypothesis testing. So as a consequence, I actually got to TA for advanced statistics, which I had never studied before.
Acha.
Yeah.
Damn. And what semester was that in?
I was TAing for advanced statistics, I believe, in my 6th semester.
And advanced statistics, just to confirm, is elective.
No, it's a mandatory course for the data science department.
Alhamdulillah. मैंने बोला
so it's mostly stuff.
भी अब करनी
It's mostly
पड़ेगी.
stuff like hypothesis testing and regression, which was on further math.
So moving forward, when we were talking earlier, you said second semester.
Oh yeah.
What is it?
So second semester, it was all right. Nothing too fancy. I'd gotten used to the fast cycle by now. The only difference was COVID happened. So that sort of
in
threw
your
things
second
in for a
semester.
loop.
So it switched all to online.
Yeah.
So you had finals online, everything.
Yep.
So I feel like
I feel like online finals were probably the saving grace for everyone who had survived PF but was at risk in.
Because I feel like I'd be like more suited to ask Ibrahim, कितनी cheating की थी? Online paper में.
Yeah, that was the common strategy for online papers. People would form cartels that would distribute questions.
Bro, literally हमारा जो था ना, because I was in A2 when COVID happened. So I elected for online grade, like expected grades. तो हमारे जो पाकिस्तानी schools हैं, हम किधर quizzes करते हैं, क्या क्या नहीं करते, you know. So they need to end up doing all of those things to send to Cambridge. तो हमारा होता था इधर लैपटॉप पड़ा है, इधर मेरी किताब है, इधर कैमरा ऑन है और इधर साथ में मेरा फ़ोन सीधा होकर इस तरह खड़ा हुआ है और उधर से मुझे मिलते जा रहे हैं जो भी क्विज है जो भी वो है उधर से मिलता जा रहा है मैं इधर देख के लिखता जा रहा हूँ आराम आराम से और उस तरह कर आके फिर मेरे स्ट्रेट एज आ गए. So yeah.
I had actually, for my second semester, I had opted for all letter grades for the degree. So I got an A or an A plus on everything except Park Studies. Park Studies was an A negative.
Park Studies?
Yeah.
I got a better grade than the gold medalist.
I mean, don't sweat it. Anyone can do that on any course.
That's true.
Not a
but
problem.
like, what was like your opinion on CPS? Because I feel like CPS was something that really allowed me to enjoy second semester.
CPS was what? Communication skills?
With the presentations and the...
It was alright. I think the lab component is a bit tiresome, but otherwise it's alright. It's nothing too problematic.
Lab की तुक नहीं बनती.
Labs for English courses, I don't get why.
Yeah, exactly. They don't need to like, especially when you have like calculus or differential equations, जिसमें you could use MATLAB. और उसके लिए अगर आप lab रख लें, तो I feel like that would be more beneficial than keeping a lab for English.
Are you sure about that though? Because the moment you make MATLAB a mandatory component of a math course, now you have an extra avenue to get weird course concerns on.
Yeah, but it's still the same because when you give the projects for both of those courses,
here's the
they
thing,
give you
like when I contrast it with statistics, for instance, as people from CS, when you cleared PF, by that point you should be comfortable with most of your languages. Meanwhile, if you have someone on the math faculty trying to teach you MATLAB, they're going to be a lot more hand-holdy, which as a CS person, if you've cleared PF, it's annoying by that point.
Yeah. I mean, I thought it was annoying in PF, but like... लेकिन वही बात है क्योंकि it's like more beneficial still than English lab because you're studying essentially the same thing in theory and lab. बस theory में थोड़ा और आपको lab में थोड़ा और आपको बोलने के लिए मिल जाता है. But like who really cares? So moving on to third semester, I feel like a lot of people in FAST are like third semester सबसे मुश्किल झटका.
Okay, so third semester we had the two giant courses. We had COAL and data structures. COAL we were being taught by Mr. Amin Chilwan, and data structures we were being taught by Mr. Hassan Mustafa.
Achha.
So
this was early 2020. No, sorry, end 2020, fall 2020.
Yeah, fall 2020. So they were all right. COAL was pretty good. Data structures was pretty good up until I guess the project and the final. I messed up my final. Meanwhile, the project was pretty bizarre. And one of the problems with it was, so I was working with Hussein Khan, and apparently Hussein was obsessed with doing a ton of work. I have no idea what was going through his mind. He was like, you know what, I'm going to do all the work. I'm like, let's be real here. If you were in my shoes, even you'd be willing to hand over the work.
Bro.
If someone's that willing to take all of it.
Like for me personally, I did all of the Cole project myself, and then I ended up doing quite a fair amount of DS as well.
I mostly took over Cole because we were up in the same group on Cole.
Yeah.
So he was handling DS. And the thing was, with the AVL trees, we had this one problem with deletion, which we couldn't figure out a fix for.
Acha.
Yeah. So
Which 3 trees did they give you? Because for us it was AVL, red, black, and B trees.
they just gave us AVL and B trees.
Acha.
We
And
didn't
you
get
had to
red
make a
black.
DBMS out of it?
No. We had to make this weird network system out of it
Acha.
using the ring.
Mhm.
So that project sort of took a weird turn. Thankfully, we managed marks on it. Sir Hassan Mustafa was pretty helpful when it came to talking things out with the instructor. But yeah, we
I
managed
like
on
Sir
it.
Hassan Mustafa.
Yeah, he was pretty chill.
Yeah.
So Cole, however, was the big surprise. So I thought Cole was pretty chill. I was doing all right on Cole. Finals came around. Okay, so the thing with Cole is, I love Cole, but the moment you give me assembly code that's recursive, I'm dead. I can't
They
handle.
give you recursive assembly code?
Yeah, they gave us this recursive assembly code, and they were asking us to trace the stack until it terminated. There was this function calling itself I don't know how many times.
Bro, I didn't even know recursion existed in assembly language.
So yeah, that was that. I could not handle the programming portions that well, so I was all right.
Mm-hmm.
But my absolutes weren't particularly impressive. I had, I think, 60, 61 absolutes. So that happened. But the thing was, with our batch...
What did you get with 6061? What grade?
I got an A, surprisingly.
Relative?
Yeah, relative. Apparently, I did ask Sir Amin Chilwan what happened.
You know
to
how
the
much I
grades.
got in Cole? I had 68 and a half absolutes. You know what grade I got?
B plus?
B.
Oh, God. Okay, so the thing was, to put it into context, our second midterm, do you know what the average was?
Yeah.
2 out of 50.
How?
I have no idea.
Either they made it too difficult or your batch is very stupid. Which one is it?
That's a political question. I'm not at sea to answer.
Yeah. In any case,
But yeah,
so
so-
fast forwarding.
So yeah, third semester clear, first semester clear. So yeah, for the most part, my semesters have been pretty similar in terms of complexity. Nothing too bizarre going on.
So is it still like you're really lazy about everything? Or is
yeah.
it like you're
I do
lazy
my
for like 3 months and then the last 1 month?
I do my assignments and exams at the last minute or as late as I can.
But I feel like that's part of being a fast student, you know?
I'd say so. I still remember my data structures assignment, last one, which was making random forests. I started 11 p.m. the day before the deadline, and I finished at 11 p.m. the day of the deadline.
This was your project?
Yeah. And Nick, this was an assignment. And I was only running on, I think, 6 cups of tea.
Bro, I had started our DS first assignment, which was image recognition. I started it at 5 p.m. when it was due at 11:59.
God.
I never made that mistake again. But like if you want to like overall like if one of your juniors was to ask you, okay, what's your secret? Yeah, anything, or is there something that they should do, like what studying?
Okay, this is actually a
Structure
pretty
should they
tricky
follow?
question because, as I've said earlier, a lot of my basis is a consequence of A-level CS. There's not a single moment where I can't quote something out of A-level CS that has impacted me today. Artificial intelligence, A-level CS. Parallel and distributed computing, A-level CS. We had a bit of multi-threads over there. So there's really nowhere where I don't have a foundation for it.
Okay.
That
so,
said, for the general person, my general studying pattern. Okay, so first off, I make sure that the course and the area of study or the topic are two distinct things. I don't view them the same. So if my course is object-oriented programming, I view the course component as a separate thing and the actual knowledge of object-oriented programming as a separate thing. So then I divide and conquer. So
Producer Zan is about to tell us to hurry up.
all right. All right. So yeah, I guess with the exams, there's nothing better than you could do other than stick to the slides. Otherwise, if you want to understand the course conceptually, what I'd say is read a textbook. But don't just read it in a superficial sense. When you're reading the sentences, I want you to stop and ponder for a bit. Wonder what's going on.
Mm-hmm. So we've talked like the past 45 minutes about like padhai and whatnot, but like taking a little step away from it, like what are your hobbies?
Oh, so my hobbies, video games for the most part. I'd say it's a crippling addiction to an extent.
We were talking earlier about it. You were talking about Sekiro and another game you were saying?
Yakuza 0.
Yakuza. So other than that, like what other?
Mostly indie titles. So with a buddy of mine, Hamad, I had been playing a ton of Risk of Rain 2.
Yeah.
Or right now I'm trying to play right now I'm like playing Crosscode. So mostly indie darlings or some major hits.
Yeah. And you used to play Valorant back in the day.
I used to play Valorant. I was a Cypher main that usually used to judge.
I feel like being a Pakistani guy, it's like a phase. सारों का Valorant at some point खेलनी होती. Valorant हो गई, PUBG हो गई. At some point.
Okay, so A2 I also had a PUBG addiction.
Oh god! And was it PUBG Mobile or the
PUBG Mobile?
Oh god!
Except I was using an emulator on my computer.
I did that once. Yeah. Because then you just use the keyboard and everything.
Yeah. So I remember clearly I would be playing until 2:30 in the morning, and then my mom would walk in and go like, "Ye kya ho raha hai? Ye kya tamasha hai?"
I had that kind of thing with Fortnite. Like I remember when it initially came out, like nobody knew what it was, nothing like that. I was on the PS Store. मुझे होता था पैसे वैसे ही नहीं है PS Store पे जाके free games देख लेते हैं कोई अच्छी लग जाती है.
So you got hooked on a Fortnite that way.
Yeah, so we had no idea what Fortnite was. It had just come out like a few months back. तो मैंने देखा Fortnite, it looked nice. ये वो मैंने download कर लिया. And this was like I think end of season 1, ये start of season 2 इस तरह कुछ था. And then we started playing and slowly Fortnite became this huge icon of a game. And फिर हमारा यही होता था we were like a group of 4 friends. We used to play League of Legends. For like the past 10 years we've been playing League of Legends. So then we'd switch to Fortnite और हम रात के 3-3, 4-4 बजे तक बैठे रहते थे Fortnite खेल रहे होते थे.
My toaster couldn't handle Fortnite. My toaster was a Core 2 Duo with 4 gigs of RAM.
Yeah, it's not happening. It's not even running.
It's not happening.
Because at the time I had a GTX 1050 Ti with an i5 7300 HQ, and even that would struggle. Like initially on Fortnite, like the really old, like season 1, 2, 3, 4, on that it was like high settings and then shadows off, and it would run perfectly fine 80, 90, 100 FPS. But then as they kept updating Fortnite, it just kept going to shit. Like even on my current laptop, I have a Predator 300 with a 3060 i7 12700. Even on that, when I play Fortnite, if I'm not in performance mode, then I'm gonna get frame drops.
I ended up quitting multiplayer games, especially because I shifted to Linux instead of Windows.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because of Valorant's anti-cheat system, you can't really play Valorant on Linux, not even with a VM, if I'm aware.
I think the only games you can really play on Linux are the Steam
games.
supports Linux, no?
Steam Proton is amazing in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, mostly single player games now.
And you switched to Linux because it was more streamlined, or because less resources were being taken up by Linux?
A combination. So resources on Windows were being hectic, and in addition, I did not want to switch to Windows 11 later.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like now is the perfect opportunity to kick the bucket and
you dodged a bullet.
Switch to Linux.
You actually dodged a bullet. Like Windows 11 is terrible.
Yeah.
Because I'd updated my previous laptop to Windows 11, and then I used it for like 2-3 months, and then I ended up switching back. And my current laptop, the one I bought, is like preloaded Windows 11, and I so want to switch back, even that one back to Windows 10. But then I know it's going to be a hassle to get 11 again the next year.
Good God.
When 10 runs out.
No,
so it's
I'm
like
not doing that.
Because literally yesterday I had to end up resetting my whole computer, because Windows 11 there's some glitch that you're going to start listening to some audio, and the speaker volume will start up fine, and then after like 30 seconds it's going to reduce to the point where even at 100% volume you can't hear anything. Mm-hmm. So I was trying to fix that on my laptop, and I ended up just screwing the whole thing up. Like instead of getting less audio, I ended up getting no audio. So last night I ended up resetting the PC, and now there are like a few problems. Like League of Legends, it isn't showing up in the registry or the control panel, but if I click the exe file, it's gonna run. So I have no idea how I'm gonna delete it or anything, but I'm gonna go see that ghar pe.
So yeah, that's pretty much it. I've got gaming, guitar, which I mentioned earlier, trying to get into that. I read occasionally. Oh, and I watch some anime.
Which?
Okay, so I think this is pretty much common knowledge by this point, but I'm a huge fan of JoJo's Bizarre Adventures.
I've never seen it.
Good God. It's basically the most weirdest anime you could ever fathom.
I mean, it has bizarre in the name.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird. It's absolutely weird. You could have one season focusing on a man trying to deal with his vampire step sibling or adopted sibling, and then another season is just the Italian mafia trying to deal with a drug problem. So that's how weird it can get.
That makes no sense. But like for me personally, I used to watch a lot of anime. And even then, it's like the basic animes like Naruto, Dragon Ball Z, Boruto.
No, I
Death Note,
never got hooked on the
One
classic
Punch.
animes like that.
I watched One Punch Man, and then I watched a little bit of I've forgotten the name. One Piece.
No, I never got hooked onto a classic like that. I was mostly on JoJo. I'd seen Initial D. Initial D is this anime about Japanese teenagers trying to race on the toge.
No idea.
Basically, they're trying to race. Basically, people race each other going downhill.
Okay.
So that sort of stuff. It was a pretty fun anime up until the later seasons. Then they got boring.
But I think there's some basketball anime that I want to watch
I'm not aware.
because I'm a big fan of basketball.
I ended up seeing ReZero, which was pretty nice. I saw, what else did I see? Madoka Magica. Madoka Magica. I'm not going to say anything at risk of spoiling it, but you should definitely check it out if you're up for some weird anime. What else? Cowboy Bebop, classic.
So if you had to like recommend one for me to watch, what would it be?
Depends on you. Are you in? So do you watch shows for like time pass or like as visual aid or visual eye candy?
Definitely time pass.
Time pass.
But I like a good story.
It depends because a very good narrative-driven anime would be very complex, honestly. Right? I don't know. I'd usually recommend people. I don't know. I guess Cowboy Bebop to start off with.
Yeah.
Either that or maybe an anime movie or a Ghibli movie or something. They seem to be good gateway drugs.
Yeah. Anyways, it was such a pleasure. I feel like if we continue this conversation any longer, Zan is gonna murder me. So it was such a pleasure having you here. I hope we got a little bit of an insight into Haashir, who he is as a person, his background. And this is all for this episode. Thanks, guys.